Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Dan and Lori and Catherine. And today we're going to continue our discussion of Sacred Contracts by Caroline Myss. And we are starting chapter 1, page 11, if you're in the hard copy or softbound version. But before we get going with that, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then Catherine, you can take it away with the reading.
Lori Emmons in Denver.
Dan Sissick in Las Vegas.
Good morning, it's Catherine Clement, and I will start on chapter 1. What is a sacred contract? Contract isn't about saying what you meant, it is about meaning what you say. 1809 to 1994, physician, poet, and humorist Oliver Wendell Holmes. When I was a young girl, my father always told me, I don't care what you do when you grow up, as long as you're a nurse or a teacher. I can still remember my fury when he said that, because I was interested only in writing. The very idea of teaching school was out of the question. Yet today, in spite of all my efforts to avoid life in the classroom, I am a teacher of workshops, of theology, of motivation, and what's more, I love it. I feel distantly connected to the nursing part of my dad's directive too, although the healing effects my work has had on many people. My father passed away in 1989, and in the early 1990s, as my mom and I were discussing my work, I said to her, well, he won after all. Then I realized that Dad hadn't won some sort of game or struggle to control what I did with my life. My contract had won. My father had been able to glimpse aspects of it, as many parents can, although their vision is often clouded by their own expectations and wishes for their children. Even without knowing about archetypes, Dad had seen something in me that evoked his understanding of the greater function and meaning of a nurse and teacher, and he related it to the career choices that were common for young women at the time. Still, my contract does contain the archetypes of the teacher and healer, which have manifested through the events of my life, even though I have never formally studied healing or teaching. My higher education has been in journalism and theology, but my work in medical intuition simply happened. I did my first intuitive reading almost by accident, and then another, and another. Word spread through the neighborhood, and soon I was doing 10 to 15 a week. My growing reputation led to invitations to lecture on my work, which in turn led to invitations to teach workshops. The most extraordinary feature about how I learned energy anatomy was the precision with which my education was organized. Again, simply happened. Within a period of 7 to 10 days, 3 people with the same illness would approach me for help. Each one would prove to be coping with similar but slightly different life problems that had contributed to the development of their illness. By the time I read all 3 individuals, I felt I had grasped the major energy stress factors behind their conditions. Shortly after I completed one trio, another 3 people in quick succession would contact me for help. Again, each would prove to have the same illness. Gradually, my understanding of energy anatomy led me to realize that our biography becomes our biology. Once I understood that principle, my education seemed to move in another direction. Whereas my previous readings had focused on assessing an individual's physical and emotional chronology, I suddenly began to perceive images that had no apparent connection to the person. In reading a woman who wanted to understand her neck pain, for instance, I got the image of a pirate in her energy field. She was a housewife from the Midwest, so this information meant absolutely nothing to her. Yet, while subsequently undergoing relaxation and visualization exercises with a hypnotherapist, She also sensed the pirate energy in her field. She saw him slashing her throat with his sword. Curiously, she also felt more positive associations, including wild lawlessness and liberated sexuality. These conflicting impressions of the pirate energy indicated to her that she was being choked or controlled by her life circumstances while yearning for a freedom that she could not consciously voice. Reading another woman a short time later who complained of severe arthritis in her hands, I kept seeing the image of an artist. When I mentioned this, however, she was baffled, insisting that she had no artistic talent whatsoever. Nonetheless, I suggested that she take up pottery as therapy for her arthritis. She began by making simple clay vases, and in time flowered into a gifted potter who now produces artistically sophisticated pieces. Finally, while reading an Australian salesman named Jimmy, who had been seriously depressed for several years, I saw a strong actor in his field, his energy field. But Jimmy had never done any acting, even though he did want to, because he said he was still in the closet and was afraid that if he acted, it would come out after that he was gay. He was, in fact, already acting, as if he were straight. But the blocking of his talent and identity had made him implode emotionally. A few years later, I was thankful to hear from Jimmy that he had pulled out of his depression and now acts in summer stock. He takes his stage work seriously, and he is no longer hiding his sexuality. When these odd images first began to emerge, they seemed so disassociated from the people I was reading, so off, that I felt that I had somehow lost my intuitive accuracy. Yet, these readings ultimately proved helpful for every person. Then, one day in 1991, everything fell into place for me. I was listening to a conversation between two women in one of my workshops. Within 5 minutes of meeting, they had exchanged the ordinary details of their lives, such as where they lived and what kind of work they did. After the basic physical details, they then spoke about what life experiences had brought them to a spiritual workshop. Suddenly, they found a life pattern they shared, an energy link that was immediately noticeable in their heightened response to each other. Their children were grown, their marriages were happily established, and they had arrived at a natural transition point in their lives. They were tired of being everyone else's servant. Now they wanted to serve themselves. Retired and liberated, they wanted to pursue their own interests and to develop their own spirits. As I listened to these kind souls describe the pattern of their lives, I was seeing through their conversation to its symbolic level. As good mothers and marriage partners, they had acted in behalf of others for most of their lives. But having accomplished this early mission, they were now striking out on their own, as the servant of myth and legend must. When the biblical Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, for instance, he bided his time and did the work requested of him through many years of service. Then he used his singular gifts as a dream interpreter to earn his freedom and become a great leader in the land, going from servant to master. All of a sudden, the vivid but mystifying images that I had been getting in my recent readings made sense. The pirate, the artist, the actor, and the servant were not part of the individual physical chronology that I had been used to reading. Rather, these images were a part of each person's spiritual chronology, personal mythology that had begun even before they entered their physical lives. These images were archetypes, energy guides that could direct people toward their spiritual purpose, their contracts. The mythic light bulb that got turned on that afternoon had stayed on ever since. From that point on, every reading I did opened with an evaluation of a person's spiritual chronology, archetypal patterns that express themselves through his personality and life experiences. And just as trios of people with the same physical illnesses had contacted me for intuitive readings, People with the same archetypal patterns began contacting me in a relatively short period of time, though spread over months rather than days. Some of my first readings, for example, were for several people who had the wounded child archetype, a pattern of emotional scars from childhood. Then I met a few who had in common a dominant victim archetype. Just as before, each of these people reflected slightly different aspects of these archetypes as a result of their individual personalities and life experiences. As I began to work purposefully with the archetypes in my readings and to teach them in my workshops, I gained further insights about how they function within our psyche. When Jung proposed his theory of the collective unconscious, he defined it as mainly populated with countless psychological patterns derived from historical roles in life, such as the mother, the trickster, the king, and the servant. Along with our individual personal unconscious, which is unique to each of us, he said, there exists a second psychic system of a collective, universal, and impersonal nature that is identical in all individuals. This collective unconscious, he believed, was inherited rather than developed. I have observed that some archetypes step out from the background of this great collective, play a much more prominent role in people's lives, and that each of us has our own personal alignment of key archetypes. Let me know if I missed the big title because I don't see it anywhere. Let me see where I'm at. I lost where I was at. Pattern.
You're coming up on it. This is the last section until it comes up. You're at through a process of research, reflection, trial, and error.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Through a process of research, reflection, trial, and error, I ultimately concluded that a unique combination of 12 archetypal patterns corresponding to the 12 houses of the zodiac works within each of us to support our personal development. These 12 patterns work together in all aspects of your life. They can be particularly vivid and perceptible in your problems or challenges, or in the places where you feel incomplete. And they can be particularly useful in healing painful memories, or redirecting your life, or finding a way to express your untapped creative potential. In a sense, each archetype represents a face and function of the divine that manifests within each of us individually. Humanity has always given names to the many powers of heaven and tried to identify the qualities inherent within each. Wait a minute. In a sense, each archetype represents a face and function of the divine that manifests within each of us individually. Humanity has always given names to the many powers of heaven and tried to identify the qualities inherent within each. The multifaceted archetypal power of the feminine, for example, expresses itself within forms as diverse as the Virgin Mary and Mother Nature. The ancient Romans and Greeks saw universal feminine powers in the characteristics of Athena, the goddess of counsel, Venus, goddess of love, and Sophia, goddess of wisdom. The Hindu culture of India gave the goddess names embodying different attributes of divine motherhood, such as Lakshmi, prosperity, Durga, fertility, Uma, unity, and Kali, destruction and rebirth. It was as if God had to separate into many different aspects in order for us to begin to approach that power. Yet, once it was named, we could invoke it and assimilate it and express it. Archetypal patterns awaken in us our own divine potential. They can liberate us from the limitations of our thoughts and feelings. They can help us shed light on the dark or little-known corners of our souls and amplify our own brilliance and strengths. Archetypes are a source of emotional, physical, and spiritual power and can help us free ourselves from fear, although sometimes, as we get to know them, a few of them may initially unleash fears within us. Our spiritual challenge with any archetype or fear is to face it and recognize the opportunity it presents to learn its inherent lesson and develop an aspect of personal power. With an archetype that we perceive as difficult or even malevolent, our task is to acknowledge it, overcome whatever weakness it indicates, and work to make its divine potential our own. The goddess Kali, for instance, is the energy of destruction. She has the power of the saboteur archetype, which is present in all of us. But what is the other side of destruction, if not rebuilding and rebirth? In symbolic or contract language, the saboteur archetype can trip you up if you do not face its considerable power, but you can also use its energy consciously to dismantle areas of your life that you need to face or fix or heal. There are always two sides to every archetype, and both can be made to work to your advantage. We tend to perceive ourselves and our universe as either good or bad, internal or external, me or you, right or wrong, symbolic or literal, joyful or sad. Our strengths and fears divide our spirit into polarities, into a duality in Eastern terms, which is why faith and doubt wage eternal battles in our psyches. By identifying and working with our archetypes, however, we can learn to consolidate the faces of our spirit and bring its power into our daily life to direct our thoughts and actions. These energy guides help us act mindfully and honorably. They help us manage our power and live up to our divine potential. I myself have found that the archetypal work I have done with each reading has contributed to my own spiritual growth and development. The experiences and insights I've had together with people I've read have helped me refine my skill as a medical intuitive, furthered my awareness of my archetypes, and even helped me through my own difficult times. I've come to believe that my encounters with my students, my workshop attendees, my readers, and so many other people are anything but casual. Like the extraordinarily organized way in which I had learned energy anatomy and was later led to read archetypal patterns, divine order makes itself known in all areas of our lives. All right.
Oh, that was a good stopping point. Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
Make note here. Bookmark in there. So that was really interesting. I liked how she talked about how these kind of divine contracts show up in archetypes and how it's interesting how she kind of came to all of this by doing these intuitive readings and then discovering things along the way. So that's very fascinating. What do you guys think?
It's really interesting how for the last couple years, the idea of polarities has really been on my mind. Everything you do is only there because it allows us to see the other side.
Yes, that's very true. And I can definitely acknowledge that it does just happen. And even to me, I don't consider myself medical intuitive, but I'm a strong empath. So I can pick up on what's going on with other people sometimes just from the way I feel. But gosh, I remember it was actually my old roommate, housemate that I lived with, and he had something horrible going on with his stomach. He was just feeling really bad, and he came to my room, and he's like, "Hey, can you help me out?" Because he knows I do energy healing. So I was like, "Okay." So I just had him, he was just standing there, and I walked up to him, and all of a sudden, in my mind, I saw this. I had an image in my mind of where to put my hands on him Actually, I didn't even touch him. I had my hands about probably 2 to 3, 4 inches away from him, but I placed them exactly where the image in my mind told me to place them. And I started moving the energy, and literally less than, I don't even think it was 10 seconds. All of a sudden, I felt this huge, like, energy shift as I was moving the energy back and forth. It was just like this huge release. And as soon as I felt that, I didn't say anything, but as soon as I felt that, he just had this huge, like, big sigh, and then whatever it was gone. So it is, I don't want to call it magical because it's more than, it's not magic. It's mystical. It's God. I don't want to,
Intuition?
well, no, it's more than that. It's God healing through you, healing someone else through you when that happens. And it just happens. It's not like something that, I mean, you can study and learn how to do these things, but even to people who have studied, it just happens. So I definitely am on the same page with her there. What do you think, Dan?
I was thinking, and a whole different area came into my mind, but like, because I have dealt with in my, my church and stuff, and hearing, and I'm believing this is along the same lines where people will pray, or they'll have a group of, members of the church and people, and pray over somebody and for healing. And, there are times where it's been like right away, and other times it's been taking a little while, but you'll hear, or I go back to where, like some of these people where they go to doctors for cancer or this or that, but then they go back to their church and have their church, and next thing you know, they're cancer free. And I agree with you. I think it's, I don't think it's, woo woo, or I think it's truly when God acts and decides He wants to work and carry it out, that that energy that God produces through a means, whether it's through one person or a bunch of people, or through prayer and thought, or can have that ability. So I like I said, I am not totally against those things. I believe they happen. I am just a little more when the people just do it, and they just do it for show, and it's like, oh, look at what, that's when I have problems. It's the ones that you hear about where, you don't really know what's going on, or what's been happening. And later on, the people say, oh, well, we prayed, or we did this, and and, and now we're here, you know. So I can get with that. And the interesting part I got out of her was when she was talking about where when she first started out, it was more dealing with the, I'm going to put the human side, the constructive side of whatever that was going on with the people. And then when she started seeing the visions and stuff, and like the pirate, for instance, um, and the because I think we all have that within us, that we have that part of us that yearns for this or that or the other thing or whatever, where we could really, for lack of a better way of saying it, one while be free, be what we feel like we really, you know, and yet we feel, I don't want to say stifled, but we feel like because we've gone on this track, like with the choices and things we made, or sometimes we feel controlled or other outside, it's, and the fact that she got the pirate and the other stuff were more the spiritual side. And I think that's also like when God allows us to have dreams or visions or something to where we see, you know, that part of us that we don't fully recognize a lot of times, or we don't fully acknowledge. And I think that's a part of it, is a lot of times I don't think we fully acknowledge it.
I think when she's talking about these archetypes and how, um, well, like that first woman she was talking about with the pirate energy and not knowing what that was about. And the woman didn't know it at first, but then as she kind of thought on it a little bit and then it all kind of made sense, that feeling of, the yearning for freedom from the motherhood aspect. And it kind of reminded me how, sometimes we can watch a movie or read a book and there's like certain characters in there that really resonate with us, where we're like, oh yeah, I completely get that, even though it's completely fictional story or whatever. And it's like I read a book when I was younger of this woman who was a very independent woman. She was kind of forced into being independent, on her own, and excluded from her family and all of that. But she was very independent, and how she just kind of, you know, took that on and made the best of it. And I don't know why, but that always just kind of resonated with me. And I'm curious with, even though that's never been me in my life, what that could potentially mean in terms of like the sacred contract aspect of, I'm curious about learning that of how these things that resonate with us in the archetypes, what can that mean for us in, our actual life, if you will, of, why do these things resonate? How can that help me in my kind of going forward? The ideas that kind of come into my life, and I kind of like have these yearnings for some aspect. And what could that, what does that mean? What am I not doing that I should be doing? I'm curious about. And how can I get more, um, I don't know, fulfillment or something that
Into
yeah, in tune with it, because I feel like I'm lacking in somewhere that is, whether that's the spiritual side or the just out of sync with maybe what I should be doing, or I don't know, something just feels off a lot of the time. And I'm curious about that, as if this is going to help us sort that out.
the title of the book, Sacred Contracts, makes me think of things like the parent and child, the mother, father, siblings. It's just something that's there and kind of expected or accepted, that, or maybe even a marriage or whatever. That's not so much. That's definitely in the choices part of all of our lives. We make these choices, and then the book we read before about our soul's plan, if it was all decided before I got here.
Well, and I also feel like I couldn't have made different choices. We supposedly have free will, right? And yet, when I look back on my life, I'm like, even though there were times when I had these choices in front of me and I could choose one path or another path, it felt like it was this huge struggle within myself. And I still chose this path. It's like, even though I was having this kind of back of my mind going, oh, you really want to do this or you really want to do that, that I can't even, I'm like, I know that I still would have made that choice in a different way if I hadn't chose it with, you know, who I'm with right now, for instance, like back, when Chris and I first got together. I'm like, if I hadn't chose him and gone down this path, I just know I would have done it with someone else and it would have been the same freaking story, so it's kind of like that kind of say that like you're saying, this like pre-planned whatever experience that I came here for, I would have chosen it regardless of who I ended up with. And it just is it's funny to me sometimes that I like argue so much with myself. Well, if you'd have just done this or you'd have just done that, and then but then on this other side, myself is like, even if you had, you still would have been doing the same thing you're doing. Or something very similar. You did it. So it's fascinating to me how I don't know, we have these kind of internal conflicts, but yet at the same time, I think there is a lot to be said for this this idea of like what you said, sacred contracts, because I I know that, you know, I can't be other than what I am, I mean, even if I wanted to be, I just don't think that I would be, so I don't know that
The
any of that.
destiny factor.
You what?
The destiny factor.
Yeah, there's some aspect to that. It's like I can't remember what there's something that I read or saw or something, and they were talking about I don't remember what it was. And I'm like, I just don't think I'm capable of, whatever it is. Sure you could if there was no rules or there was no anything, we could run amok, right? We just do anything we want, steal from anybody, take anything, kill anybody, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't think I'm capable of such a thing. So I think that we have these kind of like underlying things with ourselves that even if we say we wanted this, that, or the other, we're not capable of it. Even sure, we think we are, or yeah, but I don't think we necessarily are. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Wish to be or want to
Sure.
be.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I think I'm on the other side of this a little bit. I think we really can, because I remember back when I was like 19 or 20, I really wanted to move to Arizona, down in the Phoenix area, so I could get in-state residency and go to ASU. I really was wanting to do that. I was kind of geared up, ready to go, ready to move. But I ended up talking with my mom, and she pointed out some things, and I followed the advice based on her, what she pointed out, and looking at my financial situation, and that I really wasn't financially in my head. I was set, because that's where I wanted to go to school, because ASU at that time had a better accounting program than UNLV. So I went to school, I wanted to go to school there, get down there, get in state so I could maybe get some, grants or Pell Grants, or, to go there and work. But I made the choice to stay here. But I really think over the course of my life, there have been times where I've had times to have relationships and stuff, and I made decisions not to, based on, but I really think, deep down, that we do have that free will. Sometimes I think our perceptions of ourselves and how we look at ourselves and how we see ourselves, and outside influences that we allow to come in and overlap, and sometimes outweigh what we know that we really want to do, where we really want to go, and we let that be the over. So I think deep down we still have that free will and that ability. I think we let our own fears and our own things truly get in the way, and but once again, maybe that, part of that, soul plan and stuff and things like that, when we come down here, and according to it, it says that we forget a lot of what we set ourselves up to do, but inherently we still have that sense and that feeling. And I think that we do have that capability. It's just finding that wherewithal and trusting God, spirit. I say God, but for lack of a other, spirit, or that leaning towards what we deep down inherently know that we really feel we should be doing and what we really want to do. But I really think fear and how the rest of the world perceives us kind of overlaps and gets in the way, or going to what we feel is comfortable. And I've done that a lot in my life. I've done what was comfortable or what was safe rather than doing what in my heart and in my mind, oh, I really, and knowing and seeing where that would have taken me. If I had moved to Arizona, my whole life would be on such a different trajectory. It might be that I did go to ASU and get my degree there, or it might have been I found out that it was too expensive and not whatever, but I was down there, I'm living, I'm doing my thing, and who knows, maybe I would have ended up getting married, finding somebody that would, because the relationships I've had here have not been, a couple of them I wanted, but they didn't want me, those type of things. So it's hard to say, but I really deep down think that you hear stories of people where they so changed their life and they just did it. That to me, that we can't just not say it can't be a possibility.
I think it's both, really. Like, it's all of it, which is super confusing. But, I look back on some of the choices I made, and which really takes me back to the Midnight Library book that we read, you guys, where she went through all the different lives, and there was always something about the life that was lacking. Like, she never got into one life where everything was the way she wanted it. Um, so I think it can be both. I know that there are times I really feel like the universe has pushed things upon me. I'll put it that way. Like the horseback fall. In 1 second, my entire career was gone. My life changed. I lost the relationship I was in at the time. Like, everything changed. And yes, it was my choice to get on that horse. It was my choice to get on the horse, even though my intuition said that saddle isn't tight enough. And I said, oh, of course it's tight enough because I've already tightened it 3 times. And so I get on the horse and bam. So I think listening is really important, listening to your intuition, because if you don't, I think somehow it will get like forced upon you. Um, there's just so many weird things in my life. I just have to believe that I came in with I do believe that I came in with a soul contract with, you know, already having agreed to do things that I don't remember now. And I feel that because I just get so many acknowledgments from spirit, uh, and just the way that my body feels in certain situations with certain people, little signs that I get that just let me know that everything is perfect, even though, my human head might be saying, this is bullshit. Like, so, so I really, even though, well, I believe I would have chosen what I chose because I don't think I would put it on anybody else. I think when I asked and I got that answer to that question, I think that was true. And I can see that in my life where I will kind of throw myself on the line for people, um, disregarding my own personal needs and things. Samantha, I see you doing the same things. So we've got some similar archetypes going on. And the other thing is, like, because I have just some rare conditions, like several of them, it oops, my phone's going off. Hold on. There we go. Um, it makes me feel like, every time because as a healer, I'm always interested in why are these things happening and who it's happening to and looking for the patterns. And, in every one of those conditions, when I get into like a Facebook group of people that have the same condition, there are always so many things that we have in common. I mean, it's crazy. And so I do think that there is, I mean, as much as I've tried to like instantly heal myself and all these things that I don't seem to be able to do, there is definitely something to be said about experiences in life leading to other things, I think, because otherwise, how could these people that have these strange conditions like be so similar and then have another strange condition and be so similar to those and have another strange condition and be so similar? Like there's patterns. And I think that's why people like Joe Dispenza and some of these other people say that it's not that it's all in your head, but it's like it's in your body somewhere. You know what I mean? Like it's in there from a past experience, from a trauma, from whatever. And they believe that once you can get past that, and heal those things, that the body will then heal itself. And I mean, I have been so bad with my health to where I thought I was going to be like in a nursing home with someone taking care of me for the rest of my life. I've been really super, super, super bad health, you guys. And yet I've come back from that. I mean, even though I still have a lot of things going on, I'm a relatively healthy person. To look at me, you would never know that I have anything wrong with me? So I'm not one of these people that says, I'm broken, I can't be fixed. That's it. I am always looking for that opening. I'm very willing to concede that I have had lots of trauma in my life. And I'm very open to the idea that all that could be causing what's going on physically. I hope it is, because that means it can be healed, you know?
I completely agree. I feel like I have a healthy body, but I am so compromised in so many ways. I mean, you know how it is, Catherine, being in a wheelchair. And I chose to put myself there so I didn't break a bone or something. I feel like breaking a hip would have been worse than being in a wheelchair. And there could be a lot worse things in life. And I feel completely healthy most of the time. Rarely get colds. I just can't feed myself. And it's no big deal. I have always believed there is something to heal this. I have to believe in that.
I made a comment in the chat, and this is kind of a little off the sub, but I've noticed that how over the course of the years, somehow all the books that we've gone through and all the things, they somehow all kind of work together and have all somehow in some ways, different ways over the course of the time, had a help in whatever we're currently, because we talked about, leap of, the big leap, and, what to say when we talk. It's interesting how, and all this still encompasses, and how we are still learning and still growing and understanding this vast uniqueness that we all are, even though, a lot of us are similar, but yet we're all unique, but yet how we all gravitate and come. And I think that also too is within whatever God has designed in our lives that we may not fully understand here on earth, but we, understood there, um, and brings it all out to I think you'll agree with it, in our growth and journey towards growing closer more and one with God and Spirit, in that sense, to where we are connected and where we do understand and get to that place where we are fully manifested in, whether it's in this life or as I believe, in the next life, when I'm, move on to heaven, to be with God, that it all kind of comes together then. And I believe it will, but it's just, I just, that thought just crossed my mind, how the same cohesive group seems to, we still hear pretty much. And that also is something very, I think, interesting. The the glue, I guess, that kind of keeps us all, in that, and the love that we have for each one of us. That, to me, just kind of boggles my mind. But yet I love it, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I would think I would have to know what I'm choosing between, what I'm trading.
You want to know, right?
Sometimes
Right.
I was going to say, sometimes part of I don't always want to know. That's part of the journey to learn and grow and see it and see what it does. And I think that's part of what holds us back, is if we're honest, I think we're all afraid of the unknown and how it might turn out too.
Wanting to know the end from the beginning before I decide.
I don't think it works that way.
Oh, dang it. There's always a catch.
Okay. Yep.
But it's interesting, how she's. To me, what gets me is it seems to me like she's learned all along her journey. It was not like, oh, I know all this and
The
I'm going to
author?
do this. You know, you know, yeah, the author, and how she's, to me, so far, it seems like she's kind of kept stumbling upon, and what kind of helped guide her towards where she is. But, you know, I don't
Oh,
think, I think had she known fully, I don't know if she may not have chosen to do it,
you
but
mean
by
she's
maybe,
another human?
no.
Oh, that's a good point, Dan, because she was railing against the whole idea of being a teacher and a nurse, and yet she still ends up going down a path that is very similar to that. So I never had anybody telling me what they think I should do, at least not that I remember.
Well,
My
what are
mom
the
always said I
odds?
could do whatever. What was that, Catherine?
What are the odds? Like when I decided I had to go to school because my kids were starving, I basically just went, took their test, and wanted them to tell me what I was allowed to do, based on my test scores. That's what I wanted. Tell me what to do to fix the situation. And they said, you can do whatever you want to do because my spirits also give me answers to test questions. They literally do. They light it up. They light up. If it's like a multiple choice, one of the answers will light up for me, just like somebody's shining a flashlight on it. So it's not that I knew all that stuff, but I tested good.
Wow.
And then my choice was, I said, what can I do that I can actually feed my children? I don't care about having a degree. I need a job. And they said, you could be an engineer or a nurse. And I had no connection to either one of those whatsoever. And I said, which one has less math? And they said nursing. And that's how I became a nurse. And yet, being a nurse is so completely in tune with me. And the only thing that wasn't in tune was I'm against medications and things, which, that too, God has sort of forced those upon me too. Like, well, you can be against them, but you can't live without them. So how's that? Blah, blah, blah. Like, so what are the chances of me becoming what I was probably born to be in some aspects? You know what I mean? Just because I say which one has less math. That's why I think there's destiny.
Well,
I
and I
would,
can resonate with that aspect of, I have to make a choice here because, I'm pregnant, was what happened with me. And, because I could have kept going on the path that I was on, which wasn't making a whole lot of money. I was working with dogs and all of that. But then I found out I was pregnant and I'm like, well, I got to make more money than what I'm making right now. What can I do with what I know right now? And that was somebody mentioned to me about pet grooming, right? And I'm sitting here thinking, well, that seems like that's a thing that's very artistic. I don't know that I can do that. I'm not an artistic person. I kind of resonate with what one of the people that she was talking about in there of not being artistic. Oh, the lady with arthritis in her hands. And yet, I end up going down that path because of, being pregnant. So I had to take care of a child and I have to make more money. And this is something that I could do and it won't take too much effort for me to learn it. And, and then I was doing that. That was my first career. So it's, it's interesting to me how some aspect of these archetypes in us, like the nurturing mother aspect, has influenced us significantly in our lives as to what we might do. And because I would have never done that career if it hadn't been those circumstances. I know that I wouldn't have. It just wouldn't have ever crossed my mind. And yet that's the direction I went. And then when I got to the point where I just didn't want to do it anymore, it was just taking too much out of me. It's still so many of my life choices have been because of my kids, because of being a mother, because of being a supportive partner in my in my life with my marriage. And there's been very few choices that I've made that have just been about myself. At least I don't think so. My husband might say otherwise, but I feel like a lot of my choices have been because of family, and I may not have made those choices otherwise. So
Interesting. I'm trying to. I made a lot of my choices because of where I was at, things like that. Well, even within the last 6 months, 8 months, I made choices based, and I'll be straight up honest, on my car. And I'm like, okay, I've got to do this because I need my vehicle to be working and running so I can, like it wasn't, well, oh, well, I really want to do this. I really, no, I've got, so it was, in some ways, it was kind of made for me. But some of the things I'm dealing with right now is Samantha and I were talking about it a little bit before. There's something I've been doing on my own offline for, I'm an accountant. I got my degree in accounting. Um, and I found something where I see an active way, because I've never had a problem with the accounting or doing that. I've worked and done that, but trying to find my own way of how to get things going myself personally to get there has been a daunting and a challenging, but I've found somebody online that could help get me to that point. Granted, it will be a little bit of money and something that is not easily in my situation, but I'm going to go back and see what how I can work this out, because in the end run, I know that I can get there, and I know it will help me get to a point where, and still keep my freedom of being more in charge of my, because I love, why the reason why I love Ubering is because I'm more in charge of my life. If I need to go to the doctor, I can just, okay, yeah, I can go. I don't have to call the boss or supervisor or say, oh, I need such and such. No, you can't have that day off because somebody else has already asked for that day, or you know, you know, or if I want to take time off, you have to request to get that time off. And if somebody has more seniority or they've already had theirs approved, you know, then you have to rearrange everything in your life to fit that because of some other person. I'm trying to be nice about it because that used to frustrate the living hell out of me when I worked. Oh, I want to go in here and this is when I want to go, but no, you can't, you know. So in that sense, you know, this will still allow me that, but maybe get me out of Ubering, bringing as much or more income, and still allow me that freedom, but less wear and tear on my car. So, you know, it's sometimes
It's interesting. I'm
choices.
kind of the exact opposite, that I feel like I wanted to be in charge of my own life and all of that, but then I don't necessarily feel like I have the skills to be the manager, the operator, the owner, the operator, and never really had a feeling of a calling. You know, of what I wanted to do or be. And it's always been a challenge that, like, there's a catch-22 no matter what. Like, I got to go to school so that I can get a job, but if I go to school, then I can't work.
Yep, I understand that. I've never felt like I had a calling of a specific thing I should be doing. I always felt like every choice I've made has been because of some other circumstance, but you know, it's worked out okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. Circumstances got me where I am here, and I'm grateful for it.
Mhm. It's like
I
that underlying archetype and whatever it is in me that feels like it needs to be independent, you know, and on my own and doing my own like personal adventure. It always gets overridden by the mother nurturer, you know, one that has to take care of everybody else that can't, you know.
Right,
So
being the feminine.
yeah, yeah, something about that. And every time my independent spirit goes, oh, we just need to go do blah blah blah. I'm like, but I can't because of blah blah blah. So like this overrides everything else. So, you know, I don't know. But guys, we're at the top of the hour. We need to wrap up because I know some of us have other meetings we need to get on to and work we've got to get to also. So
I, I was
Love
just
you
gonna
all.
make
Have a great week.
one last one last
go ahead,
comment.
Dan. Yep.
I think it's interesting, and I think in some ways it's a two-sided thing. I think we are, you know, done an injustice by not knowing what we really agreed to before we came in some ways. But I think deep down, intuitively, or somehow through the course of life, somehow that kind of gets dangled out in front of us or in the background and whatever, you know, we have that inkling. But maybe if the fact that we don't fully know or have it all helps allow, and I'm going to go with free will, to really come in and play and let what's going on in the time and moment be what guides us. And like you said, oh, well, okay, this part of me overrides this part of me because of, you know, what is here in front of me. I've got kids, I've got this, I've got that, or me, you know, whatever each one of us respectively has. So I still think that's where that free will kind of comes in and allows us to decide which of the I don't want to say voices, but I think that's the best way. Voices are coming at us, or instances or circumstances or opportunities
Forces.
are, yeah, okay, forces in front of us that move us forward. So that's my last thought. Have a good week.
Yep. Yeah, everybody have a great weekend.
You too.
We'll see you next time.
Love
For
you
those of
all.
you who are watching this, if I ever get it posted on YouTube, which I'll catch up eventually, and you know, you can join in on the conversation if you'd like to. You can find us on Facebook. Just search for Mindset Mastery Collective. All right, with that, have a great, awesome, amazing week. We'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.